So the public is worked up about this issue. It's been 60% listed housing and or homelessness as their top issue. And of course, why now? The surplus, 45 to 65 billion. 45 is the low end, 65 billion is the higher end at this point, and it actually could even go more. It's a very high surplus. So what is CAR and the coalition asking for? $200 million. In the scheme of things, given that size of that surplus, this is a modest ask actually. $200 million for down payment assistance, $400 million to build deed restricted but ownership property. That particular ask, of course, represents we are part of a coalition on this effort, and that coalition includes Habitat for Humanity, which builds a lot of those kind of homes. So why include funding for home ownership in the budget? Obviously, home ownership should be achievable for everyone, and all of you know the arguments, I would hope, for why home ownership is a good thing, right? So those are things you should be able to, just be able to answer, and why it should be achievable. It helps close the wealth gap. This is something that resonates increasingly across the street, meaning in the Capitol and among members, is that we have a growing wealth gap in our society, and the best way for working people to be able to gain some wealth is home ownership. And it's the best way, of course, to, again, achieve potential intergenerational wealth, as well as housing security. We often stress the intergenerational wealth, the equity, but it's housing security too, and that's, I think, a vital thing to always stress. Home ownership benefits should be enjoyed by more working Californians, especially, again, something which can be brought up a lot is California's changing demographics mean, right, that the newer buyers are a much more diverse set of buyers than previously existed in this state. So shouldn't that diverse population enjoy the same home ownership opportunities that older generations of Californians took for granted? And again, an argument that I think resonates. So ask your senators to include funding for home ownership in the state budget. We have a lot of stuff to talk about with the people in the Assembly, but for the senators, this is our ask, and this is what we want from them. Thanks. And now we will move to the opposed. Before I go into this, I'm going to talk about, I've talked, I think, in other forums about, we have a lot of things we really dislike in the Assembly. So why is this the hot issue? One of the reasons is a lot of the other stuff we hate, is stuff everybody knows we hate. We hate Ellis, they know that. They know we don't like rental registries, they know. We don't need to educate them and explain why this is a bad idea, or where the realtors are on this idea. This is one which is a really bad idea, and it's one we want to make clear, and it's good that we as realtors make clear that we as realtors oppose these kind of bills. And what this is the rental property right of first offer, where you can't list or sell a rental property unless it's first offered to qualified entities. Those of you who are in local jurisdictions might be familiar with this on the local level as TOPA, Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, or COPA, Community Opportunity to Purchase Acts, which have been defeated so far in every local jurisdiction except San Francisco, and theirs is not nearly as bad as this one. So this is something we've been opposing. Impact has given so much money on a lot of local campaigns on this. So this is the hot issue for the Assembly. Again, one of the reasons we don't have the hot issues yet in the Senate for opposition is a lot of these bad Assembly bills have not moved up there yet. So it applies to any multifamily property, and the really outrageous part, any single family or condo that has a tenant this would apply to. So it creates a complicated multi-step process that could potentially keep a property off the market for months as it winds through. It applies to transfers of single and multifamily property, certain very limited exceptions for, I think, certain types of family transfers, etc. But they're largely irrelevant, right? Because the whole idea is really bad, and these little exceptions don't change our feelings about this bill at all. Okay, so there's actually, Morgan, let's just speed this one out to the end. So what this does is just to give you an illustration of how involved that process is. An owner decides to sell by, say, putting it on the MLS. They have to give notice to qualified tenants and qualified entities, wait 10 days. If there's an expression of interest, They then have to provide a disclosure package, which is all sorts of information about the rental property, a notice to the tenants. Next slide, please. And they have different criteria for each type of investment property. So if it's a single family home or condo that's owner occupied, the tenant has 40 days, the qualified entity or tenant has 40 days to submit an offer, 30 days from submitting the offer to secure financing, extensions are built in. Okay, next slide, please. If it's 2 to 4 units, 40 days, and then 90 days from submitting the offer. And this is 2 to 4, right? So a duplex, plus a 30-day extension can be extended as well. If 60 days, then 120 days, plus a 40-day extension. You don't need to necessarily know the nuances of that, but you're getting the sense of, this is potentially, if this drags through, could be up to maybe 6 months to a year, right? Potentially, all these delays, and just like a normal transaction. So that's why it's especially outrageous, and we're going to go through a little more about why. And the second part of this is the most important part. It's a complicated multi-step process that could keep property off for months. Everybody understands dynamic markets, that's a real problem to just keep it off the market. And again, it applies to single and multifamily property. Some owners need to sell quickly, right? And when I say quickly, remember how much this drags out the process. So selling quickly might mean selling in a normal period of time that you need to sell a property. Maybe also markets could be changing, any number of reasons you might need to sell. This suddenly delays that. There's no exception to this. You would be stuck in a period of time trying to comply with all the requirements if one of those entities makes an offer. Prioritizes organizations over families, right? Because this applies to single family home rentals or condo rentals. You're giving preferences to a tenant, and let's just be blunt. I mean, you have to be careful of this. How many tenants have the wherewithal to buy that property, right? This is really, again, for nonprofits, so it's prioritizing organizations over individuals who might want to actually just buy a home. It goes counter to everything that we're saying about how we need home ownership, when in fact you're saying a single family home or condo needs to stay effectively potentially as a rental, right? It goes into everything that the state is supposedly saying about home ownership. Next slide. Creates undue financial hardship. Can you imagine if you're somebody like me who kept his old condo in California, in Pasadena, if I needed to sell this, even me, it would be, how do you go through all these steps, right? I mean, yes, you'll have the help of a realtor, but it's involved. If I'm going to have to get attorneys involved, it's going to burden the costs. Everything about this is burdensome to just a quote-unquote regular person who has to deal with this. Tied in with that, of course, is the procedures will overwhelm small property owners. And that's, of course, one of the biggest concerns for us is in terms of being voices for the homeowners, right? Or voices for the small investor, the mom and pop investor, is instead of just being able to sell these properties with a realtor going forward, instead you've got this very complicated procedure. And think how complicated it is, right? It's not just, oh, here's a 30-day window and take care of and yes or no. Suddenly there's a new disclosure package for the rental property, so many days specified, 90 to 120 day financing periods built into law. So, next slide. And again, this is one, and I sometimes think, do they just not understand how real estate gets sold? There's nothing that stops a nonprofit or a tenant. The vast majority of these properties, there's been a move, and we're part of this, which is a lot of REO sales, for example, maybe never make it to market, right? They're sold en masse. The vast majority of homes, which are rental homes and rental properties, go on the open market. So why can't the nonprofits or the tenant, these are going to be competitive offers, why can't they just make an offer, right? Just make an offer. Because supposedly this is not supposed to get them a discount, right? Make an offer. They can buy these properties on the open market. Next slide. So ask your assembly members to vote no on AB 2710. Okay, thanks. Right, that's it. That is it. All right, next slide.